realfast.com. Today we're working on a four-wheel drive problem, and we happen to have an 03 GMC Yukon. This is a known problem for General Motors, and there's a very good TSB out telling you exactly the situation and how to make the repair. And there's various other vehicles that may have this problem. But the key is a code. It's not a P code, it's a C code, C0327. It's in the four-wheel drive system. Because this is a clear and known problem, there's really no diagnostics for this. You just need to follow the procedures in the TSB to make the repair. It'll probably present with a driver complaint that the four-wheel drive is just not working. On the dash you'll see some lights that are supposed to be working, but there's no response to there. It's just like the four-wheel drive is dead. There also may be a complaint of a little bit of noise, either scraping or grinding noise. So if you have the code C0327 and your four-wheel drive is not working, then be sure and follow the specifics in that TSB. Now we're going to show you here a little bit how to make the repair. Now we're going to be working in the transfer case. We've got the vehicle up in the lift so that we can get a good access to everything.
There's three different bolts in this. One's up here at the top, one down here at the bottom, one over here to the side. The repair procedure describes taking the drive shaft out of it to get access. If you're careful enough to fish this bolt out of here, this unit can be removed without removing the drive shaft. So we've got the other two bolts previously removed. As this comes down, there's a seal plate that comes off the front of this. And there's a plug in up here.
Once you get it down, now we take it over to the bench to actually change the switch. This is the transfer case encoder motor assembly, and our sensor goes inside this. What I'll try to do is take this off. Now you need to check this seal. A lot of times that's going to be reusable as long as it's not damaged or too flattened out. Now anytime you're taking gears apart, it's always best to index them so you can get them back in the right place. Now if you mark this at two different places like that, you can see that you can get it back together. Now the sensor that we have to replace is underneath here, so this gear has to come out. First we got to disconnect the harness. Because I always do. Now always make sure that you compare the parts that are the same. We always like to just put an X on the old part so that we know that we won't accidentally mess up and put the old part back in. Now you notice on this gear there's a keyway, and on the sensor there's one inside, a little plastic knob in there. Now you want to make sure that you don't damage the sensor when you put it on, so take a 3/4 deep well socket that'll fit over that, and that's how we're going to install the sensor. Line up your keyway and just kind of begin to push it on, so don't force it on. That way you don't damage the inside plastic part of that sensor. Plug it back together. Line up the marks. It should go right in, making sure all your marks are lined up just like they were. Now make sure your gasket is all tucked in place where it needs to be. Then we put the cover back on. Before we took this all apart, we wanted to index it. If you notice the teeth here, there's a wide tooth. We just went across from there and put a mark. So we go back together. Now up on the transfer case, we did the same thing. You'll see the shaft and there's a wide tooth, and then we made a mark right there so they're all pointing together at the same. Put your seal plate on it. Now this one bolt right here, make sure you have it actually in its hole before you push it up in place. Otherwise you'll be fighting it. That will also keep the motor assembly and that plate lined up. It's a tight fit and you kind of have to fiddle it around a little bit, but you will get it back in place. Now up here on the transfer case, when we took this out, you see we made a mark, and that mark corresponded with this wider space on the gear. Now the first time we went to put this up here, that gear had actually rotated, so you have to twist that back so that it lines up with your mark. Otherwise they'll never go in place. So the teeth right there with that mark we made need to line up. And the teeth need to line up here with the mark we made. And then you also have a dowel that needs to be in place. Then everything should go back in place as you raise it up. Excuse me. So if you're trying to put this all back together and it's just not fitting, take it back down, make sure that your marks are all lined up, the dowel and the two marks on the gears, and that your bolt is already up in place, and then it should just move right back into place. Now if you notice when you're reading the TSB, it says to remove the front drive shaft. If you take it out, it will make it a little bit easier to get to this one bolt. But if you just have patience, you can just take this bolt out this way, and then you don't have to remove your front drive shaft. Torque your bolts down and plug your connector back in. So all we have to do is change this one little sensor, but we're not done yet. This still needs to be reprogrammed. Now if you've made the investment in all the equipment and software to do the reprogramming, this would be the time. Or you have the option, you can take it to the dealer, or you can do what I do. I use mobile reflash. I don't do the reflashing myself. My shop's in Springfield, Missouri, and here we've got a very good mobile reflash service. Mark Parton's the owner. It's called Mobile Reflash. I'm going to let him explain to you what we're going to do.
Hey, what we're going to do here today is we're going to install new software in an active transfer case module. The OEMs, when they manufacture modules, they install operating systems or firmware in that particular module. And sometimes what happens is, as a vehicle ages, that software doesn't become corrupt, but it becomes outdated. And because the software is developed for brand new vehicles, as the vehicles accumulate age and mileage, things operate differently. So what we're going to do here with the Tech 2, we're going to plug this in. We've already done this. We're going to pull a part number out of the active transfer case module. And then with that part number, we look up a new calibration to see if there's new operating software for that particular module. What I'm using is GM's SPS programming. It's on a DVD, which is available on the internet. We've got our part number highlighted here. We're just going to click OK. We're going to select our software that we want to install. Going to select our operating system we want to install. And we just click Next. Here it gives a description of what some issues that the new software is going to address. In this particular reason, I believe it was a DTC C0327 code, and we'll click Next again. The programming will start, and it usually lasts about anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes depending upon the baud rate of the system. There's different ways to program. A lot of shops can use a Tech 2. It's where you plug in, you retrieve information from the software, the calibration, you run over and plug it into your desktop PC, and you download the information in the Tech 2 and go back to the car and upload it back into the module. We're using a pass-through system. It's a little bit faster. We don't have to run back and forth and make so many trips, and it's actually the norm of what's going on. I think most dealerships now are using pass-through communications for vehicles, so it's the rage to use that because it's faster and it saves time in production. Once the program is complete, you'll get a complete message. You need to turn the ignition off. This is always important. This resets modules in about any car, whether it's a Ford, GM, or a Dodge. You want to turn that key off and let it sit for 30 seconds, and your program is complete. Most programming will be okay. There's no problems with any errors unless you have an error code that pops up to begin with. It won't let you proceed on with that programming. So as long as the flash, the pre-programming finishes without any error codes, it's a complete job. You should be good to go.
Now here at my shop, we have not gotten into the actual reprogramming and reflashing, so we depend real heavily on Mark, Mobile Reflash. Probably in your community you have someone that can do mobile reflashing as well. But here in Springfield, Mark is the man. For more information, you can go to his website, which is mrpflash.com.